Hi, I'm Randy Gardner, Director of Engineering for JVC Broadcasting and Chief Engineer for our stations in Fort Walton Beach. This is year number 6 for making these year-end recap videos. Most wonder why I do it. Just love building things. Whether it be cars and trucks, motorcycles, sound and lighting pieces, radio stations, or even videos, building and even repairing things. It's my favorite part of the job. In last year's video, AM 660 in Orlando became ESPN Sports Radio. The parking lot was repaired. A call screening booth was added for Florida Man Radio in Orlando. Cleaned up at the Orlando Tower sites. Had my first That 70s party. And then broke my ankle at the end of the night. Built a system for sending satellite audio and relay closures to Orlando or any station on the Florida Man Radio network. A bathroom trash can from the Home Depot became a new feed horn cover for the satellite dish after installing a new 5G filter. Made a wiring harness and installed a new console in Orlando. Built a new fence in Fort Walton Beach. And for the first time, watched a broadcast tower get dropped to the ground. It was violent.
Boys, the lights didn't make it.
So now here's this year's engineering year-end review for 2024. This year started out with another That 70s party. We rang in 2024 with all things groovy at the VFW in Fort Walton Beach.
Let's get it on.
Good time was had, and this time, no broken bones. A lot of time this year was spent at the tower site. Now, lucky for me, and the envy of many broadcast engineers, is that all of our signals originate from the same tower. 2 of our stations even use the same antenna. A thorough upgrade and overhaul of this tower site is overdue and has been the plan since JVC Broadcasting purchased these stations in 2021. As a matter of fact, Step 1 was already completed when we replaced the main antenna, the top of the tower, in 2022. It's a giant 10-bay antenna that is currently used for 2 of our stations. These combiners currently allow us to transmit Highway 98 Country and 102.1 The Wave on the main antenna. We plan to add a 3rd station to this antenna. This will give our 3 biggest signals the benefits of being on this giant antenna, the very top of the tower. More height and more gain means better coverage. To do this, we first have to upgrade our combiner system. Once all of this has been completed, the rest of the plan includes replacing 3 of our aging transmitters. They went on the air well before the turn of the century and have long outlived their life expectancy. The easiest and proper way to perform any rebuild like this is with a clean slate. While there is only 1 tower, there are 4 buildings, and currently, JVC Broadcasting takes up space in all or a portion of 3 of these buildings. However, building number 3 was abandoned by its previous tenant and was not being used by anyone and could make a great clean slate for this overhaul. Plus, the newer transmitters take up a lot less room than the older versions, meaning we could fit almost everything we needed in 1 building instead of 3. However, building 3 was, well, nasty. It was full of junk and garbage, and it also appears that it had served as a home for a family of raccoons at some point. It was really bad. My idea was approved to consolidate most of our operation into Building 3 and to make Phase 1 of this mission a father and son project. My son Randon drove down from Paducah, Kentucky and spent about 10 days with me, helping with the heavy lifting of loading stuff in a dumpster. A couple of the old transmitters that were left behind were too heavy to be lifted, so the two of us took them apart and loaded them one piece at a time into this dumpster. One of the transmitters we removed was manufactured in the 1960s. We then scrubbed the floors and the walls. To get the crud off the floor, we ended up using a Scotch-Brite pad on an electric sander. We scrubbed the floor one tile at a time and then mopped and waxed, rinsed, and repeatedly. While it wasn't perfect, the inside of Building 3 was far cleaner and shinier than it had been in years, possibly ever. Then outside, we added new pole and wall-mounted LED fixtures in 5 different locations. Once our efforts had achieved all they could, I was on my own, and the next step was a floor plan. The blue masking tape on the floor is to mark where each piece of new equipment will go. Now, one of the benefits of this junked-up building was a 600-amp electrical service. However, there were problems, especially outside. The meter base and junction boxes had pulled away from their mounts due to the pole leaning more and more towards the feed where the buildings all connect to the transformer. I resecured the equipment back to the panel and will eventually secure a guy wire and get the pole completely plumb and straight again. Back inside, all the conduit, wire, and disconnects were removed that we were not planning to use. I was able to recycle wire and conduit for almost the entire project. There are now 3-phase disconnects and/or whips for each of the 3 new transmitters that we have planned. Inside and out, there was still a lot more to do to make Building 3 what we wanted it to be. This panel that's now in Building 2 allows us to switch from the main antenna to a backup antenna in the event the main antenna fails or requires maintenance. I built this frame in our new Building 3 so it'd have a steady mount for the switch and a strong anchor point for the coax that comes in from the tower. The building also had 2 old wall-hanging air conditioning units. They hadn't worked in years and needed to go away. Getting them removed off the wall was a challenge. I basically disassembled them and removed the parts one piece at a time. The cases were bolted and sealed on the outside, and the air ducts were secured to the walls on the inside. Removing the bolts did nothing to release them from the wall. I pulled and pried with absolute zero success. I ended up pulling them off the walls using a large ratchet strap secured to the base of the tower. Once the units were removed, I loaded up the truck and then dumped the scraps in the neighbor's backyard. The next step was to seal the 2 large openings left behind by these old AC units with marine-grade plywood. And to make these covers last as long as possible, I also sprayed them with the ever-popular Flex Seal, as seen on TV, and then applied a couple of coats of brown Rust-Oleum to somewhat match the exterior pebblestone. I also installed a new equipment rack, made a few Cat 5 runs from the new rack to each transmitter location. Now, one of our transmitters will still live in another building, so I added a conduit between Buildings 3 and 4 to house fiber, Cat 5, and shielded audio cable. We have small converters that allow us to send audio and data over fiber, plus regular Cat 5 and XLR connections in both buildings for remote controls and in case the fiber route fails. Part of this project is adding a third station to the main antenna. This requires a new combiner setup. It's a large set of filters that allow multiple radio stations to broadcast on a single antenna system. After shopping several vendors, we ended up using the same company that made our old system. They came up with an arrangement that allows us to reuse one of the old filters, saving a lot of money. The new combiners finally arrived in town and were carefully unloaded with a forklift and removed from the crates and then loaded into a much smaller truck and delivered to the tower site. Once there, we positioned a ramp and rolled these new combiner units safely into their new home. A few weeks later, these 20-foot pieces of rigid copper coax arrived. Using the measurements provided by the transmitter manufacturer and the floor plan I had made earlier, I started plumbing the coax sections that will connect the output of each of the new transmitters to the appropriate input on the combiners. Now, just waiting on the new transmitter. Florida gets more than its share of thunderstorms and lightning. Grounding is our only protection for the equipment on the tower and in the buildings. Copper grounding straps, rods, and cables are hiding underground all around the tower site. I secured a few loose pieces at the base of the tower and repaired a rusted and rotted connection at one of the guy wire anchors. Then, back inside of Building 3, I ran new strap all around the interior and silver soldered pieces to connect to each of the combiners, equipment racks, and transmitters, then tied Building 3 to the existing ground system at the base of the tower. I mentioned earlier that we are currently taking up space in 3 different buildings at the tower site. Building 1 houses 3 transmitters, one being a backup transmitter for all of our stations. Building 4 houses 2 more of our transmitters as well as a transmitter for another station on this tower. Building 2 houses our current combiner system and the dehydrator that keeps all of our lines that run up the tower pressurized and dry. Now, in the spring of this year, the last of the old wall-hanging air conditioning units died on Building 2, and it was yet another removal process I won't soon forget for both units. Nothing we have in this building really produces much heat. Even those pieces are coming out at the completion of this project, so this building didn't need a lot of cooling power. With some hesitation, I decided on this little window unit, and even through the hottest days this summer, the building stayed 77 degrees, which is exactly where the thermostat is set. Now, another big deal that demanded attention in 2024 was this mess. One weekend, we found the lobby and front sidewalk littered with dead termites. I cleaned up the mess, but a few days later, we started seeing damaged drywall in one of the control rooms upstairs. We called a local pest and termite professional. They set bait traps and sprayed multiple times, but the problem continued to get worse. Now, after a few weeks of frustration, one Sunday afternoon, Wolfie and I ripped into the wall, removing all of the sheetrock and insulation, and it was obvious. These pests had been here much longer than we realized. At the time of this recording, permits and paperwork have been completed and approved. Contractors should be starting repair work in the next few weeks. There were also a few road trips this year, but not as many as in the years past. We installed a low-power transmitter in Ocala. We put another signal on the air in Lake Butler near Gainesville, Florida. Now, this was relocating the signal that was on the tower that we dropped last year. We were putting the signal on the air to fulfill an agreement that included selling it. That plan fell through, and we're actually still discussing Plan Bs.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Another major event for 2024 was selling the Orlando stations. However, We kept the Florida Man Radio brand that originated there. The Shannon Burke Show still airs on Florida Man Radio and originates from the Orlando area. We are planning to grow the Florida Man Network to other stations, and we have new office space in Orlando nearly straight across the street from the old location. We are gathering equipment now to build a talk studio for Florida Man Radio and a production room there for JVC Broadcasting, and that should be completed in 2025. And the final big project for 2024 was one of the most fun, a new talk recording studio and lounge. This space was originally designed to be a performance room, but has not been used much at all since COVID. So I decided to repurpose this room to be a talk studio and lounge. I first positioned tables and chairs in different positions to get a few ideas, and then put a few ideas on paper, and with input from others, I finally had a plan. Now, I am in no way a professional cabinet builder or even a good finish carpenter, but I own a hammer, a level, and a few power tools. After completing the build and a blue weathered looking paint job, I stenciled and freehanded some graphics. Then, after reaching out for some advice from a local pro, I decided to try my hand at an epoxy countertop. I ended up having a thin section, and I tried to mix a little more epoxy and resin to patch that area. A week later, that section was still sticky feeling. It simply was not going to cure, ever. So I sanded one entire side down to a haze and then poured that entire section again. This time it went much better, and while it's not perfect, it looks pretty good. I have much more planned for this room, including a coffee and drink bar. I hope to have the other end of this room finished sometime in 2025.
3 beers and the real truth right here in the brand new
badass studio.
It is a badass. It's the Randy did this thing up right. We're gonna get some.
Well, that about covers all of the major work projects for this past year. 2024 also brought for me its share of health issues, surgeries and heart problems, kidney stones, and the like. My hope is to have all of that resolved early in 2025. On the brighter side, 2024 included the most awesome 60th birthday party. Friends and family traveled to Fort Walton Beach from Kentucky, Tennessee, Orlando, New York, Texas, and beyond. It was truly a wonderful night. Then my wife Dita wrecked her car. Then Dita got a new car. Well, new to us car. That about wraps up 2024 as an engineer for JVC Broadcasting. Thank you so much for watching. So they said find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's a lie. I'm sure I'm the hardest working guy here. Just ask me.
It's a big job just getting by with 9 kids and a wife. I've been a working man dang near all my life. I'll be working as long as my 2 hands are fit to use. I drink my beer in a tavern, sing a little bit of these working man blues. I keep my nose on the grindstone. I work hard every day. Might get a little tired on the weekend after I draw my pay, but I'll go back working. Come Monday morning, I'm right back with the crew. I'll drink a little beer that evening, sing a little bit of these working man blues. I'll work it out, Leroy. Well, hey, the working man like me ain't never been on welfare. That's one place I won't be, 'cause I'll be working long as my 2 hands fit to use. I drink a little beer in a tavern, sing a little bit of these working man blues. Oh, here comes the real boy. Well, hey, the working man like me ain't never been on welfare. That's the one place I won't but I'll be working as long as my two hands are fit to use. I drink my beer in a tap room, sing a little bit of these working man blues. Oh, get some. Yeah, drink my beer in the tavern, cry a little bit of these working man blues.